Vanilla syrup is a pretty quick and easy recipe to bring together, and it is absolutely incredibly delicious and really versatile in the way you can use it for something that is pretty straightforward. It also only takes a couple of ingredients, so we just need some vanilla, so some vanilla beans, a bit of sugar, and we'll also grab a bit of water. G'day there, it's Rachel here from Bush Edge Homesteading Australia, and today I'm going to be putting together a new batch of vanilla syrup because we are completely out of it at the moment. We go through a fair bit of it since I started making it last year because it is a really versatile thing that you can use on lots of different things. So we use it on our yogurt because we do homemade yogurt here, and when I do that it's unsweetened and it's really nice just to add a bit of sweetness to it, and the vanilla syrup brings that sweetness, but it also brings a beautiful vanilla flavour as well. It's also great when we pull out the Ninja Creamy and use that to make some ice creams. Adding in vanilla syrup instead of the extract just adds a bit of sweetness and again that beautiful vanilla flavour. It's really, really nice in our fermented sodas, and that's actually one of the reasons I want to make another batch, because I do want to show you how we've been using it to make fermented sodas in a upcoming video as well. I'm finding, well, at least it feels like I'm getting better results using it instead of using vanilla extract, which I suspect is because the extract has got alcohol in it. So I actually want to do a bit of a side-by-side with you guys and compare what a fermented soda is like using the vanilla syrup versus the extract. And for us, it's actually going to be really informative because it'll kind of clarify whether it is just a gut feel that I have that the syrup is working better, or maybe it's just the conditions on the day and it is kind of warmer when we've been fermenting one batch versus another, or the bacteria are doing really well. So that's something to kind of look out for, that we'll use it for. It's also kind of handy in some of the baking and things that we do, things like custards. And of course, the other way you can use it is in your cuppas. So if you like vanilla coffee, people do tend to use the vanilla syrup in a lot of those sort of things. For me, I don't tend to use it in the coffee so much. When I like a bit of a vanilla hit, I tend to actually gravitate to our vanilla sugar. So that's this one here. That there was pretty much one of the cheats versions that you can do, where when you get your deliveries of vanilla beans, often they'll come in a bag like this one here. You can kind of see that's a vacuum seal bag. And sometimes what you can do, and this is just a bit of a hack and tip that we'll add on to this video, you can kind of cut the top off, and there's often a bit of vanilla oil and stuff and the scent that's imparted on the bags. I will often fill that up with a bit of fresh sugar, reseal it with our vacuum sealer, leave it for a period of time, and then it kind of just gets the vanilla flavour from the bag infused into that sugar. And that's what I've got here in this little container, sits on the bench. So I can use that in coffees, of course, but also sprinkle it on top of things like maybe I've got some fruit, or maybe I've got a dessert where I want to sprinkle a little bit of sugar on top. And not only does it kind of give that bit of sweetness, but it enhances it a bit with some vanilla flavour as well. So I reckon on that note, we should jump in and start pulling together this batch of vanilla syrup, and you'll see how easy it actually is. The first thing I want to do is grab a couple of cups of sugar, but of course I've run out of sugar in the kitchen, so I'm going to need to go get my bulk sugar container. Alrighty, so if you've followed along for a while, you probably know that we do keep some bulk products here, one of which is sugar, so that I don't run out at times like this. It's basically just one of the food grade storage barrels that you can get from Bunnings. And the sugar that I have in here is the raw sugar that you can get through Honest to Goodness. We actually get that delivered here. We've shared a couple of videos on that in the past. So what I'm going to do is actually just top up my sugar container for the kitchen. And then what we'll do is also grab 2 cups of this, and that's going to go straight in the pot to make the syrup. Okay, so I've just taken another 2 cups straight out of there, And that will go straight in the pot. That burner's not on yet though, because what I'm going to do is add the water first. Next, I'm just going to add 2 cups of water to those 2 cups of sugar. And at this point, I'm going to turn on the burner and I'm just going to start stirring it. Now, at this point, I am going to give it a good stir because there will be that layer of sugar on the bottom. Obviously, there was quite a bit of sugar to the water. It's kind of like 50-50 each at this stage. And we want that all to dissolve. The heat's obviously going to help with the dissolving as well. But the heat is also important because we want to turn this into a syrup. So we're not going to like boil and boil this like you would do in toffee making or candy making. We definitely do want to boil a little bit because we do want it to kind of thicken a little bit. So it gets a bit syrupy. It is still very runny with this, but there is kind of a phase, and it's really hard to describe exactly where it's at because we do kind of just eyeball it. But it does get a little bit syrupy when you boil it just a little bit. Now that a lot of that sugar has started dissolving, I'm actually going to pop in the vanilla beans. So I'm going to grab those now. The vanilla beans that we're using are some from I think it was the Nugini Naturals last order that I got. They do 100 gram kind of batches that I quite like ordering. And when you get them in the 100 grams, they actually send out 4 of these 25 gram bags. And the reason that I suppose the recipe and ratios that I've gone with is kind of the 2 cups of water to 2 cups sugar to 25 grams of vanilla is because I've worked it around these little bags that I get. But obviously you can adjust the ratios depending on how many vanilla beans you guys are using. So we'll open that up. These are really, really good value. They're a wonderful vanilla bean, but they are also really cheap if you're in Australia and looking for good value beans. The 4 bags, so I've still got from this last batch because I've ordered from them a couple of times now. You know, I've still got 3 left. All 4 bags of this size were $35 from memory. So that means kind of like for each of these batches of vanilla syrup that I'm doing, it's like $8 something. And that's putting a lot of vanilla beans in. Like I have seen other people doing this where they use less beans, and you could definitely do that, still get a good vanilla flavor. I'm really trying to concentrate it, which is why I'm using quite a bit of vanilla. And because we're getting it at the good price, you know, I'm comfortable doing that. You know, when you see the prices of vanilla syrup and what you can buy it for, $8 for the quantity that we're going to get is very good value. But the other thing, as you'll see towards the end of this, is even after this, these vanilla beans are not going to be spent. We are going to still use these for other things that we do, like cooking. You know, they go into custards and stuff like that, baking. You could even dry them out and use them to make a vanilla sugar of your own. So yeah, they definitely aren't done after this. Anyway, I can see this is starting to get to a boil, so I do want to pop these in now. And I'll give them a bit of a stir in. As I said, I'm going to let this boil for a little bit, and then we'll turn it off. I'm going to bring you in a little bit, just so you can also see the colour of this. You can probably see this liquid is brown, and if you're doing this with not a raw sugar, you might actually find that yours isn't looking as brown as this. And it's just purely because this colour here, it's not so much from the vanilla beans at this stage. That's predominantly come off of the raw sugar that we're using. So if you've got a difference in colour, I just wanted to share that's why ours looks like this, and yours might look a little different. But you can obviously use raw sugar. You can use normal sugar. I'm sure you could probably do it with other things as well. Not that we've experimented with that, but yeah, I have seen people do things like vanilla infused honeys. There's obviously quite a bit of playing around that you can do with this sort of thing. Now, out of interest, I'm just going to grab out my candy thermometer because I am actually wondering if on here it talks about the temperature for syrup. Not that I ever use this thing, but I thought it might be on there. Maybe not. I guess the key is you don't want it to get that hot. I've let that bubble away for a few minutes like this, but as I said, I don't want it to go too far. I'm not trying to make toffee or caramel or anything like that here, so at this point I am going to turn that off. And I'm just going to leave it now, and I'm going to leave it overnight just on the stovetop. I will put a lid on top of it though, and I'm just going to leave it here to cool and infuse overnight, leaving the beans in just to try and extract as much of the flavour from those vanilla beans as possible. And yeah, then tomorrow we'll come back together and I'll show you the next steps. Good morning. It's early. I am in my jammies, so this is going to be one of those videos now that is going to be pointing this way at what we're doing. But of course, the reason I do that is because I want to show you how it really rolls around here, and sometimes I am not camera ready. Anyway, what we're going to do now is get the vanilla syrup that has been kind of infusing in this pot overnight into the bottles. I have had the lid on the whole time, pretty much since it was super hot. That is kind of important, or at least I feel it is, so that you don't get contaminants landing in there, because of course, when we put the lid on, it had all been boiled up. So yeah, from here, I'm going to get it into some bottles. We are going to then just store it, and I'll share with you a little bit as well about how long it stores up for and how we do that too. Okay, so these two here are the bottles that I'm going to pop the vanilla syrup in. You don't need anything special when it comes to the bottles, because this isn't being like pressure canned or anything like that. So you can just use bottles that, you know, if you've got some pretty ones that you want to put your vanilla syrup in, that can be a nice thing to do. This one here I find is just nice and easy to store in the door in my fridge, which is where we're going to put this in the end. So that's why that one there is one of my preferred ones. Normally what I do is actually make my vanilla creamy soda at the same time as doing this. So I wouldn't normally need kind of a bit of an overflow one like this. I'd actually be putting some of the syrup straight into the soda, but because I want to make a separate video with you guys on that, that's why I'm going to kind of just put some aside to reserve for that little project. Yeah, so that's the bottles. I have cleaned them already. So I've just given them a wash out with hot soapy water. You could sterilize them as well, and that probably gives you even more protection against, you know, any contaminants or anything like that that could affect your vanilla syrup in there. But yeah, I don't tend to do that. I tend to just give it a hot soapy water wash and then pop the syrup in it. To make it nice and easy to get the vanilla syrup in the bottles without hopefully splashing it everywhere, if you've watched my videos a while, you probably know that I may still splash it everywhere, but the funnel does help. And all we do is we kind of pop that in the top, and then we are going to pour in some of this syrup. And that's what it's looking like today. Now, to make it easier so it doesn't splash everywhere, what we're going to do is we're going to pull out those vanilla beans, and I'm going to pop those in a little separate container. Now, I thought I'd bring you back over to the oven area here, where I've got the kind of light in the range hood that should hopefully mean you can see the beans and the syrup a little bit better in the pot as I pull out the vanilla beans. I'm just going to pop those in a little plastic container. You can pop it in a glass jar. It's just somewhere to pop those vanilla beans until you use them up. And tongs are handy because you can grab them and kind of let as much of the syrup drain off as possible before you kind of pop those vanilla beans to the side. Oh, I tell you what, this smells absolutely wonderful. It would be incredible if YouTube could share the smell with you guys as well as the sight of things. But that just means you're going to have to give this a go yourself, and then you'll see exactly what I mean, I guess. All right. Whoop. Oh dear, now I'm throwing them on my stove. I told you there would be a whoop. There's always a whoops in my videos, isn't there? Oh goodness, I'm just going to use my fingers. There we go. All right, so there is the vanilla beans, and they are not going to go to waste because they still have an amazing amount of vanilla flavor to gift. One of the things I love doing when I make this is then to make a bit of a baked vanilla custard. And I'll throw a picture of the recipe at the very end of this video if that's something you do want to give a go. I don't have a video on that yet, but essentially what I do is I actually use some of the vanilla beans, open them up. So far, you probably noticed I didn't actually split the beans when we made this syrup. And that was because I didn't want little floaty bits in the vanilla syrup. So that was purposeful, but it does mean that there's still a lot on the inside of these in terms of flavor to gift, and putting that in like custards and stuff is beautiful, in baking and stuff is beautiful. And I know that there is a lot of information that says don't put vanilla beans in the fridge or in the freezer. But I do find after doing this recipe, I do tend to just kind of put the lid on and pop this in the fridge for a little bit until I'm making that recipe. I personally haven't found an issue with doing that. And sometimes I've actually had them sit in the fridge for a couple of weeks before I've used them up, and that's been okay. But I will say do your own research on that, because there is a bit of info that, they shouldn't be put in the fridge. But I have had pretty good success to date personally with doing that. So that one's definitely your call. The other thing you can use these vanilla beans for is making vanilla sugar as well. So I mentioned earlier in this video about how we do the vanilla sugar just using the bags, but you can also let these dry out, and you do need to let them dry out completely, otherwise your sugar is going to clump. And yeah, if you dry them fully out and then you pop them in with some sugar, it'll kind of impart the flavor as well. If you want the caviar, so the little vanilla-y speckles from inside of these beans in your sugar, just split them and open them. And if you don't, just leave them whole. All right, so now that we've got those vanilla beans out of our syrup, it's time to get the syrup in those bottles. I'm not sure if you can see that, but it is beautiful and syrupy. In fact, let me bring you in for a bit of a closer look. I've just remembered the last couple of times I've done this, I actually doubled the recipe. That is why we normally fill this one up and get a bit of a extra as well, but I've only done the single batch today, so yeah, I don't need that one as well. And that's the quantity that we've got with just the single batch today. Yeah, so I'm actually going to update my recipe here just to say the single batch is 650 ml. If you're doing this, it really is about having 50% sugar, 50% water, and then the right amount of vanilla beans so that you actually get enough vanilla-y flavour. I've moved the vanilla syrup now back over to the stove top because I want to show you the colour. As you can see here, the one that we've done today, it is brown, and the reason it's got that brown colour to it isn't just because of the vanilla. It's of course to do with the sugar that we used. So if you've used a raw sugar versus a white sugar, it will look a little bit different. So do just keep that in mind. If you've used white and yours is lighter, don't stress that it's not as vanilla-y. It'll just be the coloration that comes from the sugar. Now, in terms of storing this, it does go in the fridge. We store it in the fridge. Yes, it does have a very high amount of sugar in it, and I know some people keep their syrups on the bench, but I definitely keep it in the fridge, particularly after the findings from the last lot that I did. So when you look online, there is a lot of different guidance on how long it'll last for. Some say to use it within a week. There's others that I saw that, say it'll last a few months. But the last batch, it was a double batch, and we did have a little bit left in our bottle that we had in the fridge that we didn't get through, and it was probably about the month mark that I had noticed there was a little bit of molding, like kind of on the top of the vanilla syrup in the bottle itself. So yeah, I'm not sure if there was some maybe there was some caviar or something like that that had kind of come to the surface, had created some kind of point that molding could happen. But yeah, we did get a little bit of mold at around that month mark. And of course, being a very sugary liquid, the other risk with this is that it could ferment. So keeping it in the fridge reduces the chance of spoilage due to fermentation. Anyway, that's pretty much how we bring together vanilla syrup. It's, as you saw, pretty quick and easy to do. Remember, 50% water to sugar and then your vanilla beans, and putting in enough so that you get a good flavour off those as well. Hopefully you've enjoyed following along as we made this vanilla syrup today and yesterday, and hopefully it gives you the confidence to give it a go too if this is something you might like to try. And I definitely highly recommend you try this one because it is delicious. All right, as always guys, thanks a bunch for joining. Catch you later.